My family banned me from coming home for Christmas for one specific reason, but the holiday ended in a way they never could have imagined. So here's the thing about families. They can love you to death and then completely destroy you in the same breath. Last Christmas, my parents literally banned me from coming home. Not because I was on drugs or had robbed a bank or anything crazy like that. Nope. It was because of my boyfriend David, and, honestly, the whole thing was so ridiculous, I still can't believe it actually happened. I'm Jessica, I'm 26, and I live in this cramped Chicago apartment with David. We've been together for 2 years, and he's this tall, awkward accountant who collects comic books and makes the worst jokes you've ever heard in your life. The kind of guy who still calls his grandma every Sunday and cries during those ASPCA commercials with the sad dogs. My family used to love him. When I first brought him home to Denver, Dad spent the entire weekend teaching him how to use power tools in the garage. Mom kept forcing seconds on him at dinner. My sister Emily said he was husband material, which coming from Emily was basically like getting the Pope's blessing. But then everything went to hell 3 months ago when David's ex-fiancée showed up at our apartment building, Sarah. Apparently 5 years ago, before David and I even met, their breakup was messy, really messy. He'd followed her around, sent her messages, showed up at her workplace. Nothing violent, but enough that she got a restraining order. David had never told me any of this. When Sarah appeared that day, demanding to know if I knew what kind of man I was dating, I felt like someone had pulled the rug out from under me. But here's the thing, people change, right? David went to therapy after that whole mess. He grew up, he learned from his mistakes. My family didn't see it that way. When I told them what happened, because I'm an idiot who thought honesty was always the best policy, they completely lost their minds. Mom started crying, Dad started yelling, and Emily called David a predator. The ultimatum came a week later. Dad's voice was steady but final. It's him or us, Jessica. You can't have both. I chose David. And that's how I ended up banned from Christmas dinner for the first time in my 26 years of existence. The official disinvitation call came on a Tuesday in December. I was making spaghetti when Mom called, and for a split second I thought maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd realized how insane this whole thing was. Jessica, you're not welcome here this year, not as long as you're with him. I literally had to sit down on the kitchen floor, like my legs just gave out. Mom, you can't be serious. We can't have someone dangerous around our family. It's not safe. Dangerous, Mom, he's an accountant who cries during Disney movies. What exactly do you think he's going to do? But she'd already made up her mind. After she hung up, I sat on that cold kitchen floor for maybe an hour. David found me there when he got home from work, still wearing my apron, mascara probably all over my face. That night, I heard him on the phone in the living room, trying to call someone in my family. His voice was quiet, desperate. Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. I know I messed up in the past, but I love your daughter. Whoever it was hung up on him. I could tell because he just sat there in the dark afterward, and I could hear him crying. Christmas Eve in Chicago was brutal. We sat in our tiny apartment with our pathetic little tree, one of those scraggly ones nobody else wanted from the lot down the street. You could hear families arriving in the hallways, kids laughing, all that holiday chaos that reminded us exactly how alone we were. We should order Chinese food, David said, scrolling through his phone. Make our own tradition. I was lying on the couch with my head in his lap, thinking about how Mom always served dinner at exactly 6:30. How Dad probably burned the rolls again because he insisted on making them from scratch even though he was terrible at it. That's when David disappeared into the bedroom and came back with this wrapped box. Inside was a snow globe with a tiny house and a family of 4 standing in the front yard. When I shook it, silver glitter swirled around them like falling snow. I got it last month, he said quietly. I thought maybe next year we could give it to your parents. Something to remember our first Christmas as a real family. I started crying then, big, ugly sobs, because he'd bought that snow globe when he still believed my parents might love him someday. The phone rang at 1, 3:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at the cable box clock, wondering who calls at almost 2 in the morning on Christmas Day. Is this Jessica Martinez? The voice was older, female, urgent. Yes, who is this? This is Dorothy Henderson. I live next door to your parents. I'm so sorry to call so late, honey, but there's been an accident. The snow globe slipped out of my hand and rolled under the coffee table. Your father collapsed during dinner, heart attack. The paramedics just took him to Denver General, and your mother, she asked me to call you. Mom asked her to call me. After 3 weeks of pretending I didn't exist. Is he? He was conscious when they put him in the ambulance. Your mother rode with him. She was crying when she asked me to call you. She said to tell you she was sorry. She said to tell you to come home. 20 minutes later, David and I were in a taxi to O'Hare. I was on the phone with the airline, trying to get us on the earliest flight to Denver. David held my hand the entire way, not saying much, just being exactly what I needed. They're going to hate that you're there, I told him. Let them hate me. You need me, and I'm coming with you. The flight was half empty. Who flies at 6 a.m. on Christmas Day? I spent the entire 3 hours staring out the window, trying not to think about my dad lying in some hospital bed. Dad, who still mowed his own lawn at 62, who could fix anything, who had never been sick a day in his life. He's going to be okay, David said quietly. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But I know he loves you too much to leave without making things right. Denver General on Christmas morning was like stepping into a nightmare. Half the lights were off, wilted poinsettias everywhere, and that awful hospital smell hit me the second the elevator doors opened. I found them in the family waiting area. Mom was still wearing her Christmas dress, the red one with pearl buttons, but it was wrinkled and coffee-stained. Emily was rubbing her back. Michael was pacing by the window. They all looked up when David and I walked in. Nobody said anything for a moment, just this heavy silence. Then Mom stood up and crossed the room, her arms around me before I knew what was happening. She smelled like perfume and coffee and panic. How is he? Surgery, massive heart attack, but they caught it in time. The next few hours are critical. Then her gaze shifted to David, and her expression changed. What is he doing here? Mom, I will not have that man in the same room as my family. What has he done? I was getting angry now. Seriously, Mom, what has David done to you, to any of us? 5 years ago, to someone else, before he even knew I existed. I stepped closer. You want to know what he's done since then? He drove me to the airport at 6 a.m. on Christmas. He spent his last $300 so I wouldn't face this alone. David surprised all of us then. He walked over to Mom with this expression so gentle it made my chest ache. Mrs. Martinez, I know you don't trust me, but I need you to know that I would rather cut off my own arm than cause Jessica pain. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Then he walked to the nurse's station and came back with coffee and a blanket, which he handed to Mom without a word. I'm going to find a hotel, he told me. Call me when you know something. He kissed my forehead and walked toward the elevators. Emily was the first to speak. Mom, that was the most romantic thing I've ever seen, and you just told him to leave. Dad came out of surgery at 3:47 p.m. The surgery went very well, Dr. Rodriguez said. Full recovery expected. When we saw Dad in that hospital bed, all those tubes and wires, he looked so small. But his eyes were clear, and he smiled when he saw us. There's my girls, and my boy. You scared us, Dad, Emily said. Scared myself too. He looked at me. Jessica, baby, I'm so sorry. We were wrong, so wrong. Where's David? Dad asked. He's at a hotel. I told him to leave, Mom admitted, ashamed. Dad tried to sit up, making monitors beep. That boy flew across the country on Christmas to be here for our daughter, and you told him to leave? Call him, Dad said to me, right now. When David walked back into that hospital room carrying flowers he'd somehow found on Christmas Day, Dad held out his hand. I owe you an apology, son, a big one. No, sir. You were protecting your daughter. I respect that. I was being a stubborn fool who couldn't see a good man standing right in front of me. Mom hugged David then, actually hugged him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. We spent Christmas evening crowded in Dad's hospital room, sharing vending machine snacks and watching cheesy movies on the tiny TV. It wasn't the Christmas any of us planned, but somehow it was perfect. Because sometimes it takes almost losing everything to realize what really matters. That was 8 months ago. David proposed 3 months later with that same snow globe. We're getting married next Christmas, December 23rd, exactly 1 year after Mrs. Henderson's call. People ask if I regret choosing David over my family that Christmas, but that's not what happened. I didn't choose David over my family. I chose truth over fear, love over judgment. The hard path that led to something real. And in the end, I didn't have to choose at all, because real families fight for each other, even when they're scared, even when they're wrong. Sometimes, it just takes a heart attack on Christmas Day to remind everyone what actually matters. You know what's absolutely insane? Sarah, David's ex-fiancée, the one who started this whole mess, actually reached out to me 6 months ago. Found me on Facebook of all places, and sent this ridiculously long message apologizing for causing trouble in my relationship. I almost deleted it without reading it, but something made me click on it. Turns out she'd been in therapy for the past 2 years, working through her own baggage from that whole situation 5 years ago. She said seeing David change, seeing him build something healthy and real with me, actually gave her hope that people really can grow and become better versions of themselves. She wanted to apologize not just for showing up at our apartment that day, but for never giving him the chance to explain or make amends back then. We ended up meeting for coffee when she was in Chicago for work last month. I know, completely bizarre, right? But she's just a normal person. A little awkward, kind of nerdy actually. Works in graphic design, has 2 cats named after Harry Potter characters. Just a regular woman who got hurt really badly and reacted in a way that spiraled out of control. I was so angry for so long. She told me, stirring her latte with one of those tiny wooden sticks. I couldn't see past what he'd done to me to realize that he was probably just as messed up about the whole thing as I was. She even laughed when I told her about Dad trying to teach David how to fish and how they've been going to the lake every other weekend, even though neither of them has caught anything bigger than a minnow. He was always terrible at anything outdoorsy. She said, grinning. I used to get so frustrated trying to get him to go hiking or camping. I'm glad he found someone who appreciates his indoor nerd qualities. It was strange, sitting there talking to her, like we were old friends instead of whatever we were supposed to be to each other. But it felt good too. Like closing a chapter that had been left hanging open for too long. Mom still brings up wedding planning in literally every single phone call. She's driving me absolutely crazy with flower arrangements and seating charts and whether we should have a chocolate fountain at the reception. But I love that she cares so much now, that she's throwing herself into making our day perfect after spending so much time trying to prevent it from happening at all. What about roses? She'll say, red roses would be beautiful with your dress, or maybe white roses with red ribbon. Oh, or what about those mixed bouquets with the baby's breath? Mom, we talked about this yesterday, and the day before that. I know, but I just want everything to be perfect for you, sweetheart. Dad and David have started this Sunday tradition where they call each other to complain about whatever sports team disappointed them that week. Last Sunday, it was the Broncos' offensive line. The week before, it was the Cubs' pitching staff. They've become these grumpy old men together, and it's honestly the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Your boyfriend understands football better than I gave him credit for, Dad told me during one of our calls. He's your future son-in-law, Dad, and he's been watching YouTube videos about football strategy, so he'd have something to talk to you about. Smart kid. I like him more every day. The snow globe David gave me that awful Christmas Eve sits on our kitchen table now, right next to a framed picture from Emily's birthday party last month. We're all in it, Mom and Dad, Emily and Stephen and their kids, Michael and his new girlfriend Lisa, David and me. We look like what we are, a family that's been through hell and come out stronger and more grateful on the other side. Emily keeps joking that we should send Sarah a wedding invitation as a thank you for accidentally saving our family. I don't think that's funny, but I do think about the butterfly effect sometimes. How one person's decision to confront the past can ripple out and change everything for people they've never even met. Michael's girlfriend Lisa asked me once if I ever regret not just breaking up with David when my parents first freaked out. If I ever wonder how much easier everything would have been if I'd just chosen the path of least resistance. But here's the thing, easy isn't always right. And sometimes the hardest conversations, the most painful confrontations, the messiest situations are exactly what lead you to where you're supposed to be. Sometimes I think about that Christmas Eve when David and I were sitting alone in our crappy apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and feeling so completely cut off from everything that mattered. If someone had told me then that a year later I'd be planning a wedding with my entire family, not just involved but excited about it, I would have thought they were completely delusional. But life's funny like that, isn't it? The worst nights sometimes lead to the best mornings. The biggest disasters sometimes clear the way for the most beautiful beginnings.